You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is week 11. Amazing, right, Kyle? Week 11, quick. You have to enjoy the NFL season like a nice meal. You guys are vegans and vegetarians, but I usually say like a nice steak. Just savor it because it comes and it goes. But so far, so good. Mr. Harris, what is good in Albuquerque tonight?
We are in shelter-in-place mode, literally. I just got the emergency alert notification on my phone. Shelter in place except for emergency needs, which means everyone is lined up 50 times around Costco for toilet paper because that is clearly an emergency need.
Oh, my God.
Yes, it starts again. But otherwise, I mean, you know, for me as a bit of a hermit, it's not that horrible. I have plenty of supplies, including the ever-elusive toilet paper. So I'm ready to go. We got a lot of news this week. I'm sure Kyle's doing quite well.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It is like as Justin says, the season flies by. It's almost like every day, 7 weeks, 3 games of football. It flies by. So we are six weeks of football left. Man, I'm sure at the end of that it'll felt like something like 6 weeks. So
it'll felt like 6 years by the time we look back on it, or depending on how it goes. I mean, so the entire league has gone into intensive protocols, meaning isolation, Zoom meetings, practicing with masks, etc. Apparently the Raiders could have used this memo a week ago because almost their entire starting defense, 8 guys on the COVID list heading into the weekend's games. Most of them sound like close contact. Cleveland Farrell is one who did test positive apparently, but the rest of them it sounds like close contact, so they could well be cleared Saturday or Sunday. And they're sure all looking forward to driving victory laps around the Death Star, much like they did at Arrowhead Stadium in the bus. So, be an exciting game against the Chiefs on Sunday night if it all comes off. Thursday night football looking good, guys. We've got some issues at running back. If you're listening to this after Thursday, sorry, but Chris Carson listed as questionable, probably didn't play. That's the way it's looking. Carlos Hyde off the injury report. We'll see if Carson gets better than Adam Schefter's reporting it. It seems unlikely. Tyler Lockett with the sprained knee expected to play. On the other side of the ball, Arizona in pretty good shape. So a great high scoring matchup, we hope. Hopefully with it ending like the one we saw against Buffalo last week with not only a high score, but a super exciting play, the Hail Murray. We could all use some of that. There will be no Christian McCaffrey this week. Joe Mixon seems dicey this week. Kenny Golladay on the mend. No Drew Brees. Justin, what do you think of Jameis Winston?
Well, I think I like the Atlanta Falcons defense. Price on the road. Every time we see these two teams play, they know each other well. Projects to be a close shootout. We know what Jameis Winston is capable of doing. I think he can turn it up. And you can also turn the football over, but there's no shortage of weaponry. I know Alvin Kamara has the Q tag, but Michael Thomas has yet to fully return and be Michael Thomas. So we'll see. I mean, on DraftKings, decisions have to be made, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Are they going to kind of condense the playbook? Are they going to be conservative? Are they going to let Jameis Winston just unleash like he did for so many years in Tampa? So it'll be interesting. And again, I think he's one of these guys where if he can be Jameis Winston, 3-4 touchdowns potentially, I don't see that happening. I mean, he probably wants a big contract. He's a young guy, and I don't think he wants to be holding a clipboard for the rest of his career. So these are these auditions. The opportunity has presented itself, and he's going to have an opportunity against a terrible Atlanta Falcons secondary.
Yeah, to be clear, there is no Q tag for Alvin Kamara because it's Wednesday. And that won't be handed out until Friday if it comes at all. Last week, he missed the entire Wednesday practice, same foot issue. Ended up off the injury report today. He was limited. So we'll see how that one plays out. Matthew Stafford dealing with a sore thumb, seems likely to play. Teddy Bridgewater, sore knee. Drew Lock is all messed up with the ribs and what, like another guy that maybe isn't going to make it on the field. Kyle, what would you do with all these weapons, the vast array of weaponry at Drew Lock's fingertips, were it not Drew Lock throwing to them?
I mean, I really don't think it'd be that much different. I think they're still probably, like, their defense isn't really that good anymore. They're not going to be able to stop their opponents from scoring in the coming weeks as long as they play decent opponents. And Drew Lock was not very good. I think he had, like, a good game at, like, 2 good halves, essentially, versus the Chargers and versus Atlanta. But that sometimes happens when you get down, that you run hot while throwing aggressively, like you are making sort of the optimal throws. You want your quarterbacks getting, like, higher yards per target throws, these deep throws. And when you're down, you tend to do that. Does that make him actually good? No. And we saw that garbage time tends to come from garbage quarterbacks for a reason. And we saw that versus the Raiders, I believe, who picked him off 4 times. There is a reason he gets into garbage time so much. It's because he's a garbage quarterback. So, honestly, I think there would be very little difference going to their backup quarterback. I assume would be back to Brett Rypien. Rypien. Yeah, the extra I.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy. They're both probably bad, and I think you're just buying the guys for the volume. You were always buying Jerry Jeudy because you thought he had 10, 12 target upside. That doesn't change. The quarterback change is not a big factor for me because I didn't think Drew Lock was very good.
Yeah, I'm so old that I have to remember not to call him Mark Rypien. So there's that.
Loved him.
Yeah.
Loved him.
So, look, guys, I know we're going to dig into the DFS slate here, so probably won't get too much into Monday night's game, but I do want your opinions on this one. Tom Brady and the Patriots going up against the Los Angeles Rams, that ferocious defense. We saw Jalen Ramsey quietly. Where was all the chatter? Shut DK Metcalf the heck down. Didn't say much before or after the game. Who do you think he draws this one, Justin, and how do you think it plays out?
I'm probably going to draw Mike Evans, right? Jalen Ramsey is a big, he's probably the best, dollar for dollar is the best cornerback in the NFL. I read something yesterday or the day before. Tom Brady has been terrible when receiving pressure in the rush. I mean, it's been atrocious. The numbers are horrific. So we're going to see, because this is one of those tests. We'll see what Tom Brady is made of. But tonight it's Jalen Ramsey, Mike Evans. But again, there's no shortage of weaponry there in Tampa, so he doesn't have to just go, lean on Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is healthy. Obviously, Antonio Brown was mixed in, and Rob Gronkowski has showed some shades of the former Rob Gronkowski. So it should be a football game, a good one, no doubt. I like the Bucs. I think they're a playoff team. How deep they can go is still to be determined. I got to see more. Still have to see more.
Yeah, Gronk is turning into a thing. I mean, in the sea of mediocrity, which. I mean, Justin, you've called it that in the past. I don't think you could have ever foreseen the depths of mediocrity that we're dealing with now. So, other side of the ball, Kyle, who do you like in this one? It's a tough matchup against that Buccaneers defense.
Yeah, man, it's definitely not the easiest matchup versus the Buccaneers defense. I agree that we will end up seeing Mike Evans on Jalen Ramsey. The other way around, so I agree with Justin on that. I'm sorry. Who did you say they're playing against? Because the first time you said it, you said Tom Brady and the Patriots, and I was like, that just
I probably did say that because it's like ingrained in my brain from 20 years of writing it.
The Rams, right? That's who you said.
The Rams.
That's scrambled all of my synapses. Even as I talked about players who I could tell you were on the Rams, it scrambled all of the synapses. And I will not be editing this out. You can't make me. It's really weird. Josh Reynolds getting a lot of work. Very surprising. Yeah. I know 2 weeks, I think it has been Cooper Kupp listed with this wrist injury, maybe even more than 2 weeks. I know it's been the past 2 weeks. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because Josh Reynolds isn't that bad. I've always thought he was a decent, but I thought number 3 receiver. And now he's, I don't know, maybe, unlikely, but maybe a number 2 receiver. I'm still going to bet on our priors being strong in 1, this Rams backfield making no sense, and 2, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp being the top receivers. I have always found that I believe Cooper Kupp was the number 1 receiver, especially in the way he produces touchdowns and gets more red zone work. I think ultimately, they probably lose. I think the Bucs are just a better overall team, better quarterback, better pass catchers, maybe better running backs. Ronald Jones looked really good last week. He's super explosive, and he makes the most hilarious mistakes. So I think we see, I'll say if you want a team to pick, I'll say we see a Bucs win, and I still think Cooper Kupp operates as the number 1, Robert Woods a 1B basically. I'm going to say finally a regression game for Josh Reynolds, but who knows, maybe he's just the number 1 or 2 receiver now.
I have a few shares of him, and Van Jefferson, pick up the pace, lad. The backfield looks like we're back to, I know they were reporting he finally hit stride. They hit stride with 3 guys. You hit stride with 1 guy, Rams. Figure it out. Right now, it's the Henderson, Malcolm Brown, Akers in that order, with Malcolm Brown getting enough quality touches to really mess you up if you're a Henderson manager. So there's that. So that's Monday night. But we got a whole bunch of stuff going on over the course of the weekend. Hopefully you enjoy and or have enjoyed the Thursday night game. Again, should be a scoring bonanza. Been a lot of scoring bonanzas. So, Justin, jumping into the slate for this week, let's start with the quarterback position. Go.
So in terms of Lamar Jackson, we're depending on that rushing equity, and I think they're trying to get him to play in structure a little more. But if he's going to pay off that salary, he really has to have one of his 100-yard rushing games. So I'm not going there. Dipping down a little bit, I think Justin Herbert, 6,800 at home against the Jets is safe. You do get some of that rushing equity out of Justin Herbert. Went to Miami, and you guys know how I feel about the Dolphins defense. Played okay and good enough. Still 6,800, a lot for me. Not going there. Probably going to Ben Roethlisberger at Jacksonville. Atrocious football team. He incorporated everybody last week. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson went off, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Pretty much all got there from a fantasy angle. 20-plus fantasy points at all three of them. Ben Roethlisberger is the key to keeping that offense strong. So, I mean, they're a playoff team, no doubt. But for me this week to do what I want to do in terms of roster construction, I'm going to pay down. And it's rare that I say that, but I'm going to be paying up at running back, which is going to bring me to Alex Smith, who we're not going to get rushing equity out of anymore because of that nasty leg injury that he sustained. But 325 yards week 9, 390 week 10. He's going to get a leaky Bengals secondary at home. 5,300, not breaking the bank at all. He gets me 20 points. I move on. The touchdowns have not come, but I think they will. I mean, you get a little bit of weaponry there, a semblance of stability in the backfield with J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson's doing his thing, and obviously you have Terry McLaurin and a solid tight end in Logan Thomas. So I'm okay there. And then the other side of the ball, I might do the same thing with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow at 5,500, guns blazing. Joe Mixon's not going to play, but he's getting everybody in the mix too, outside of A.J. Green, which is sad when you think about his NFL fans. But T. Higgins is doing his thing. Tyler Bird, is a fixture in that offense. So gunslinging Joe Burrow in a game that may have some points. So I'm going to be most likely, I'll build 6-7 lineups this week, and I'm going to be paying down at quarterback, and I'm pretty comfortable about doing it. Kyle, I will leave you. There's another cheap guy. I don't know if you've spotted him or identified him, but his status is going to be contingent on Bridgewater. So I'm paying down. If I'm going to pay up, the highest I'm probably going to go is Ben Roethlisberger, and the majority of my builds are going to have Alex Smith and Joe Burrow.
I feel that Big Ben approves of your Alex Smith play. Big Ben on no practice. Also, just to be clear, Joe Mixon not ruled out yet. Give him a little time. May come on Friday. Did not practice Wednesday, so we'll see if he can get on the field. And if not, he'll probably sit out another game, and we can watch Gio Bernard struggle. Kyle, your quarterbacks.
So Justin left the one for me. I think very tentatively, we're going to see Teddy Bridgewater. Initially, I was concerned for him with the history of his knee injuries, even though I believe it was the opposite one. It's just, not a great feeling to see that either way. But, if Philip Walker does play, he's under 5K, he'd be super fun to play, but I don't think he's going to start tentatively. It's difficult to say much right now, but won't talk about him too much. He was just sick in the XFL. He was the XFL's Patrick Mahomes. It is a large discount off of the actual Patrick Mahomes, but he was sick and made throws in a number of different ways to largely wide open receivers, but he would be fun to try and play this week at a very cheap price. A quarterback who's also cheap, not nearly as cheap, but still cheap in the context of this slate, is Jameis Winston. He's back, baby. I think it is, always advantageous to be playing Jameis Winston in tournaments. When you look at just his average depth of target, it has been over 10 in every single season up until this point, which he hasn't played any reasonable sample to give us. 2016 through 2019, a 10 or greater average depth of target in every season. No single quarterback on an average of 15, I think it's 128 targets, 15 on a per game, 16 game season. No quarterback did it more than once, an over 10 ADOT. He did it in all 4 seasons. Last year, he was top 5 in deep ball attempt rate, and although this offense maybe doesn't outwardly appear conducive to that, like, who's to say Michael Thomas, who is an incredible receiver, can't catch deep balls? On his career, he is 29 of 29 on his catchable deep balls. I think it's simply that the limitations and efficiencies of Drew Brees have forced them to play a style that works for them, but might not work or might not be the preferred style of Jameis Winston. Do I think he is as aggressive as he was in Tampa Bay? Probably not. I think there is some melding in the middle of he comes closer to the New Orleans typical system, and the system bends to his will a little bit because they have to find a medium where they can both coexist. And because of that, if we're going to get any semblance of the Jameis Winston we saw last year at a pretty cheap price with like still very good weapons in a awesome matchup versus a terrible Atlanta secondary, I'm going to keep going back to that every single time. A little more expensive Cam Newton, looking better as of recently, no crazy passing numbers, but I believe did set the second highest mark, 274 yards 2 weeks ago. That was the second highest mark of his season outside of the incredible game versus Seattle, a very fun game. He's looked at least modestly efficient as a passer after coming off the reserve COVID list, and at one point getting benched for Jarrett Stidham of all players. He looks better now. Do I think he's perfect or the quarterback of the future? I don't know, still seems unlikely that either of those are true, but if he's going to run a lot, if he's going to pass a lot, and the stacking option, Jacoby Myers, is quite obvious. I don't feel like I have to really do too much to figure out who to stack with. It's the one guy who gets targets. I think that makes him a very solid stacking option, just the knowledge that that when you play him and you stack him with one person, you're probably right. It's the same reason I love playing Kyler Murray or like Josh Allen, is I know that when I play them, I'm doing the obvious stack and I'm not getting too weird. And if I am weird, it's a double stack. It's adding a piece on. For me, it's not even that. It's just Cam Newton, Myers, and that's it. And the last quarterback, I love the last quarterback, Deshaun Watson. I'm at this point, I'm really just not afraid of this New England defense. Even when we saw them play like decent against Lamar, he did set a season high in passing yards, I believe, through a handful of touchdowns. I know they arguably got the better of Lamar, but Lamar hasn't, been great. Even Joe Flacco put up numbers against them. They're probably a fine, decent defense, but I think any defense ranked between like 30 or maybe 29 or 28 and 4, if you were to just rank them in order, all those defenses are fairly interchangeable. It's the game-changing, the one season of the Bears, Jacksonville, and New England last year, maybe even Baltimore, that I'm a little concerned when my quarterback plays. And outside of that, there's not a lot of difference between a fairly above average and fairly below average. I think they fall in that range. So I'm going to keep playing Deshaun Watson, who before last week, which is kind of a week to just throw out because of the weather he faced in Cleveland, before last week he was on a streak of multi-touchdown and had just come off of a streak of 300-yard games. I think he gets right back to business, and it's a good game environment, a very reasonable total, I think just below 50. Deshaun Watson, Cam Newton, and then the weird one-off Jameis that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I think it's so just curious, who does that A-Dot that Winston, who does that benefit if it's not going to benefit? Is it Sanders?
So I think it does benefit Michael Thomas, obviously, just because I think he can do it. He's Michael Thomas. He's just as good downfield as he is low A-Dot. But yes, I think Sanders would probably be the one most important to look at. They just really haven't gotten much production out of anyone outside of him sporadically. Jared Cook, quietly, as far as tight ends go, has one of the higher A-Dots every single year. He had it last year with the team. He's largely sustained that this year. And he's had a high A-Dot among tight ends, despite the fact that his quarterback does not throw high A-Dot throws. So Jared Cook would be kind of sneaky in the sense of tight end is miserable this week, and he could be a benefactor.
I'm trying to get over that 0 last week. Help me with that, Jared Cook. So let's go to running backs, Kyle. Dive right in.
So I will dive deep. We will start going deep. Kalen Ballage. I think Kalen Ballage clearly getting the run completely ahead of Joshua Kelly. And I get it. I thought Kelly was at least an interesting prospect in the sense of I know this backfield uses a lot of two running backs, stuff, essentially getting multiple backs work throughout the game. He's been the second back almost all season. I know he had a few games where he out-carried Austin Eckler. Ever since Eckler went down, it's been anyone but him. It's been Troy Mayton-Pope, Justin Jackson. It's been now Kalen Ballage. And I get we have a sour taste in our mouth from Kalen Ballage being awful for, I don't know, I guess all of his career. But he's been fine with this team. They are massive favorites against a terrible Jets defense. I think he just makes so much sense. Up top, I think Aaron Jones is my favorite play up top. He's not quite as expensive as your nearly 9K Alvin Kamara is and your nearly, over 9K, in fact, Alvin Kamara, exactly 9K Dalvin Cook. And I know we saw last week, Jamal Williams got some run. I still think we should cling to our priors from basically the entirety of the season and last season that Aaron Jones should be the majority of the carries. He's never going to be a Derrick Henry in the amount of carries he gets, but he's always going to be incredibly efficient, and he's always going to be a highly targeted back. Now he gets, I guess it's a difficult matchup versus Indianapolis, but I more look at the total and see that it's one of the higher totals on the slate and think that's a good enough total that I'm fine with, eating a bit of a difficult matchup, but he's also had an easy schedule. I'm really not that concerned when I have Aaron Rodgers versus, again, an above average defense. But do I think they're world beaters? No, I don't think they're New England or, the great Bears defenses or whatever. They're fine. Aaron Rodgers can beat them. That means this team can put up points, and that means Aaron Jones can put up points. So if I'm paying up, Aaron Jones. If I'm paying down, Kalen Ballage. And one right in the middle, I guess not too far off from Aaron Jones, but a few hundred cheaper if you need to save the money. Miles Sanders. It was difficult, trust me. I played Miles Sanders last week, and if you played him too, I'd understand why you're upset. Boston Scott scores a touchdown. Boston Scott's kind of good. I can accept that Boston Scott might score touchdowns. The Corey Clement touchdown was really the dagger in the back. But it was still the Miles Sanders show. It was still Miles Sanders, 15 carries to, I believe, like a combined 4 carries from his backups and 1 target from his backups, whereas he got 5 targets. I think you get a bell cow back just like James Robinson, Aaron Jones, a lot of these high 6K guys, and he projects, at least what I'm looking at, as one of the lower owned, bell cow style backs among this high 6K, low 7K range. So when I get a similar role to a James Robinson, probably in a better spot, I'm just going to take that.
Fair enough. Justin, your running backs of choice, sir.
Well, I'm glad I didn't really, there's no allure with any of the names mentioned, so I'm glad I'm able to speak on some of these.
That was the nicest way of saying Kyle's running backs suck that I ever heard.
Kyle is one of the best young fantasy minds in the entire fantasy football community.
Well, it certainly doesn't feel like it.
Well, it's true. You're a hard worker. Anyways, so I mentioned that I'm going to pay up for running back this week, but we are obligated to use a flex spot. And in that flex spot, I am finding myself on Salvon Ahmed. I had a buddy from Morocco, and he prefers to be called Ahmed. So you can call him Ahmed, but the pronunciation should be Ahmed. Look, there hasn't been a ton of stability in the Dolphins' backfield since Ricky Williams has left. I think we got a little more comfortable. Myles Gaskin, 3 games, he's going to miss IR. This kid is going to get the bulk week 11 in Denver against a terrible Broncos run defense. 23rd, they're giving up $128 on the ground. Soft hands, he'll be used in the passing game. I think he's a sure shot for 18 to 20 DraftKings points. And we're paying for volume on the cheap here. I love the matchup, and I'm just going to, because the way I'm constructing lineups, which is going to start with Alvin Kamara, because I do think that James Winston is going to have a more conservative game plan, a lot of check downs, and that translates to Alvin Kamara, arguably the best running back in the NFL. 9-2, comfortable with it. I think he has a floor of 20, and I think he can get us 35. Will not kill us. And I'm going to go back to Dalvin Cook at Dallas. I mean, Dalvin Cook came back to earth. I think the volume was there, but the writing was on the wall. The last few seasons, he's done nothing against the Bears. They've game planned well for him. Divisional game, so they know him. But going right back to Dalvin Cook at 9K, 30-something touches against the Cowboys, and I think he can get us there as well, 25, 30 DraftKings points. So I am not playing games at running back. As much as I would love to agree with Kyle in regards to Aaron Jones, just kind of watching a small committee form in Green Bay with Jamal Williams, and I don't like the way Jones is used oftentimes. I'm left scratching my head. So the volume and the consistency in terms of his usage is just not there week to week for me. And I think he is a running back that he's no doubt the best back on the team. Should be getting somewhere around 20 carries a game in my estimation. But again, it's another NFL committee. Don't have a lot of confidence there. Miles Sanders, some sour, left a sour taste in our mouth. Boston Scott broke one. Sanders had 17 touches. Love the player. Do not love Doug Peterson, the way he is operating that offense. They're probably still going to win the NFC East. So the last guy I'm going to mention, because this is going to be a real condensed list this week. I'll throw 2 more names at you. I mentioned that I'm going to use Alex Smith quite a bit, and I'm not leaning on a 40-point game from him, but I will use J.D. McKissick, and I nailed Antonio Gibson last week, got us there as well as McKissick. But when you look at the targets for J.D. McKissick, week 9, week 10, 29 targets out of the backfield, 29, 5,200. Do not like the $5,200 price tag. He's more of a $4,800 player for me. But if you're telling me that he's going to get 10 to 15 targets out of the backfield, and we know historically what Alex Smith does with his running backs, I will go right there in a game stack with Terry McLaurin and McKissick and hope for 20. there. The last guy I will mention is DeAndre Swift. I think Matt Patricia's finally figuring it out that DeAndre Swift is the best running back on the Lions. I know it's hard for him to believe, and they're mixing in Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson. But look, there was a ton of conviction on Kerryon Johnson. I don't think they would have went to Swift. And look, the reality is when he gets the ball 18 times, he does his thing. And, special in the passing game as well, 6,400. I'm not going to be able to afford everything that I want when I use Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. So I'm going to have to sprinkle in a little DeAndre Swift. But in that price range, it's Swift for me. There is uncertainty because of Matt Patricia and the touches, but you would think as an employer that you would look at what he did against Washington and say, wait, we got to get this guy the football 20 times, period, and just let him do his thing. So, again, it's only week 11 now, so I should say only week 11, but this is when you start to see identities of football teams, who's for real and who's not. I think we're going to see a lot of DeAndre Swift going forward. So it's Alvin Kamara, it's Dalvin Cook, it's DeAndre Swift, and J.D. McKissick in a bind with my Alex Smith stacks. That's going to be Salvon Ahmed at 4,800. 20 touches. I love the price and I love the spot, and I think he can get us there week 11.
I kind of agree with you. Not worried about Matt Breida working fully. I'm all in on your friend Ahmed. Wide receivers, Justin.
Well, I think you got to look at Julio Jones. I have some friends in the New Orleans area and another divisional game, and I think this is something that gets overlooked. We see Vegas tells us it's going to be a shootout. It's not always a shootout when the Saints and Falcons meet. We automatically assume it's going to be a track meet. Not so sure. It's tough to not play Julio Jones, but the decision is going to lie with whether or not Calvin Ridley plays or not. 7K. I feel as though if Calvin Ridley is a full go Sunday, I might take the discount because I think Julio Jones' ownership is going to be high, being right under Devontae Adams at 8,600. So I will have shares of Julio Jones, no doubt. But dollar for dollar, gentlemen, still Keenan Allen. I go right back to Keenan Allen. He's an 8K guy. He's 7,400. The volume is there every single week. Again, I knew Justin Herbert was going to struggle somewhat on the road in Miami. Saw Tom Brady do it 15 times. I mentioned how good the Miami Dolphins secondary is. Best third down defense in the league. Keenan Allen came back to earth, had a touchdown, but only 3 receptions for 39 yards. They also took DeAndre Hopkins out of the game. So it's a damn good secondary. Mentioned Terry McLaurin. You got to go right back to him. If I'm going to use Alex Smith, I'm going to use Terry McLaurin. It's as simple as that. 6,900, the price keeps going up and up and up. He's probably a 7K guy, but really confident about Terry McLaurin each week. We knew this was going to happen. These things are coming into fruition right now. If I have to pick a Pittsburgh Steeler wide receiver, and again, all 3 of them got there last week, which is very rare to happen. I can't envision. I'm probably going to take the cheapest guy, who's still Deontay Johnson, 5,900. I think that he is the wide receiver 2 on that team. Yeah, we saw Chase Claypool, and they're loaded, no doubt, but dollar for dollar, it is Deontay Johnson, 21 targets over the last 2 weeks. When he is healthy, put the emphasis on when, he's as good as it gets. And sub 6K in a kind of a pass happy Steelers offense, I'm going to go right there against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mentioned Ben, going to have a stack, double stack, probably Juju, Johnson, combination Chase Claypool, Johnson, and so forth. Maybe mix in a little Eric Ebron. A tick above him, going to be Justin Jefferson in tournaments. I'm taking discount off of Adam Thielen. I think Adam Thielen has come back to earth by and large. The only problem with Thielen and Jefferson is when Kirk Cousins gets inside the red zone, we know that he's looking at Adam Thielen's way, and that's a problem to me. So am I 100% confident on Justin Jefferson? No, but I think week to week he's getting better. More of a rapport is forming with Kirk Cousins. So I have some allure with the Skins Bengals game, and I mentioned that I'm going to play Alex Smith, and I also mentioned I'm going to use Joe Burrow. I'm going to use Joe Burrow. It's going to probably be with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Boyd feels safer week to week, but I don't know, not so fast. For a couple more bucks, you can get T. Higgins. I think he has the upside. Another rookie wide receiver just kind of coming into his own. So a lot of exposure to that Redskins Bengals game. I know it doesn't sound like the sexiest thing in the world, but that's where I'll be. Kyle mentioned Jacoby Myers. My only question there is Cam Newton is just zooming in on Jacoby Myers, and that only goes so far for defensive coordinators in the NFL. 31 targets over the last 3 games. If you are the defensive coordinator of the Houston Texans, you would want to take him out of the game, but I get the play 4,900, and he might be a last piece for me based on the volume and the usage. So I don't see why not. So tonight, again, this is a position where it's deep, it's very deep, and decisions have to be made, but dollar for dollar, it's going to be Keenan Allen, feel real safe, Terry McLaurin, Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, as of now. And I'll throw one more. And Jacoby Myers is my cheap guy.
And by the way, Terry McLaurin is the new matchup and quarterback-proof player. Apparently, he will forever be our friend. Kyle, your wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with Jacoby Myers getting a lot of targets being a bad thing. I don't know. To me, it's like if you control a more robust portion of your offense, that should always be a good thing. And obviously these are going to be better players than I referenced, but it never stopped Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins. Honestly, the best example is it never stopped Travis Fulgham. Travis Fulgham, when he was getting the targets, they got all their guys healthy at this point. Now he looks more like a 1B or secondary receiver or something. But when he was the only option they had, it didn't really stop him because targets are targets, and I look to get the targets. And also, Houston's defense is bad, and they even if they wanted to, they couldn't stop anyone anyway. So I think Jacoby Myers fits well with the lineups I'm building because I'm building a lot of Deshaun Watson lineups. That means a lot of either Brandon Cooks or Will Fuller. For me, though, it is specifically Brandon Cooks. Over the past 4 weeks, more targets, as many air yards as Will Fuller on the entire season. More targets than Will Fuller. I think at this point we can just safely say he is the number 1 receiver. There is not a large discrepancy between him and Will Fuller, but if we can call him the number 1 receiver, right now I have him projected for similar ownership to Fuller, and he's a lot cheaper, I'm just going to keep going with Brandon Cooks. I think that is the simple move. Because I have so much Deshaun Watson, I will have some of both, and I will have some double stacks. The obvious run back to me is Jacoby Myers, but I think when we talk about my favorite plays, Deshaun Watson to Brandon Cooks will be one of them. Oh boy, I know people aren't going to like this. We go back to Marquise Brown. I'm losing money again.
Here we go.
I'm losing money again this week, boys. If there were ever a game where we could see a decent game from Lamar Jackson, it would be favored versus a pretty abysmal Tennessee defense. He gets the revenge narrative as well because they knocked him out of the playoffs, but I more look at Marquise Brown's market share numbers, and they are quite impressive. A 20% or a top 20 target share, a top 5 air yard share, and sure, it's not been a good season from Lamar Jackson, but we see this with other bad quarterbacks. We see the Amari Coopers and CeeDee Lambs have decent games, and even Michael Gallup have decent games with bad quarterbacks. We've seen, as you talked about, Terry McLaurin have a number of great games with pretty abysmal quarterback play. Why can't that happen for Marquise Brown? Is it awfully likely? No, because do I think he's probably as good as Terry McLaurin? Unlikely. And at least Terry McLaurin's quarterbacks are throwing a lot, which isn't the same case for Lamar Jackson. But Lamar Jackson, we know he has a spiky ceiling. We know he throws deep balls at an above average rate. I'm just going back for more punishment with Marquise Brown. As long as we get Teddy Bridgewater healthy, I love both Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Robbie Anderson seeing clearly the number 1 receiver. It's not like a Brandon Cooks where I think he's the number 1 receiver. It's clearly Robbie Anderson with an incredible target share and air yard share. I think both are fine. There's only a $400 discrepancy on DraftKings, so I tend to look towards Robbie Anderson there, but I think both him and DJ Moore are good values. And someone we didn't really talk about in DFS context because his price is too high was Mike Davis. I think he's $6,800 now on DraftKings. It's simply that his target numbers haven't been, incredible, and for that reason, I think both of us were just skip over him. The field is not playing it that way. The field right now, the ownership projections I'm looking at, still want to play Mike Davis. So I think you get ideal leverage by going with a Robbie Anderson or a DJ Moore, where both of those guys, as long as Teddy Bridgewater is healthy, can rack up large yards after the catch or deep catch plays, and those are all drives and plays that get consumed by 1 or 2 plays from a Robbie Anderson. That's all points that Mike Davis doesn't get to score. So I think they give me ideal leverage. And at the very top, I think the other game, because I'm targeting Jameis Winston, I want to run back. And my run back, more likely than not, will be Julio Jones. I do think Calvin Ridley would be a very interesting contrarian pivot. I just think Jameis Winston is going to be unique enough on his own right that I can go with the more obvious Julio Jones, who has a better yards per route run, better PFF grade, and will be healthy, actually. So I'm going to go with Julio Jones, although, again, it's sort of like my Deshaun Watson situation. I'm going to have enough Jameis that I will get some of both Julio and Calvin this week.
That's reasonable enough. So tight end. Dive in, Kyle.
tight end, man, do I have to? It is like trying to dive into like a toxic waste pit. My God. I mean, I will have a little bit of Mark Andrews. I'd prefer to stack my Lamar Jackson lineups with Marquise Brown, but I think because it correlates with a position that is downright awful, I'll play some Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. He still has really good touchdown upside. It's just the yardage really hasn't been there. Hasn't really been there for any of these Ravens guys. So I prefer the Marquise Brown stack, but I'll also do some Mark Andrews. Moving down, Hayden Hurst, I think, is an interesting play. I'm probably going to end up getting into some Matt Ryan, not as much as Jameis Winston, but it's another thing where I think when the slate is this bad, Mark Andrews is our number one tight end in price on DK under 5K, which is insane, and he's not even been good this year. So I think when the slate is this ugly, I'm either looking to completely just punt, say like we're all going to score 10 points. Why not me pay $2,700 or $3,300 for my 10 points? So I'm either looking to punt or make correlations. My correlations come with the more expensive guys. My punts come with the cheaper guys. Logan Thomas, 4 targets in every single game. 4 targets does not sound like a lot. But like I said, we're all scoring very little points this week at tight end, I think. So why not pay a little less than most people and still get good volume? Only 3 tight ends have seen at least 4 targets in every single game this week. It's not even the guys you would expect either. It is Hunter Henry, TJ Hawkinson, and Logan Thomas. I mean, that's not like those guys all get a decent amount of volume, but it kind of makes the point even more salient that Hunter Henry is going to cost you $4,600. You can get the same volume with Logan Thomas. Does it come from as good of a quarterback? God, no. God, it does not. And the last tight end, Dallas Goedert, kind of just falls in that same range of I think he gets more work. Like him and Austin Hooper are the same price. I'd be fairly confident saying that, home favored Cleveland is going to pass less and pass less to Austin Hooper than road dog Philly at Cleveland will be passing to Dallas Goedert. So I think at 3,800, he's a solid, not great play, but I mean, that is all you need on this awful slate.
Yeah, I'll buy that. Justin, what are you buying?
When we dive into the sewerage of mediocrity, it is pathetic as it gets this week, and it's Hayden Hurst. I'm going to have Alvin Kamara. I'm going to have Michael Thomas, and if I'm not going to pay up for Julio Jones, which I'm probably going to, and Calvin Ridley if he plays, I'm going to take a discount and use Hayden Hurst. I mean, he is the epitome of what a fantasy tight end is. In the level of contentment you get is 5 receptions, 50 yards, and hopefully you get a touchdown. I think that he can get you 15, he can get you 16 PPR points, and you're good with that at 4,400. He feels the safest to me, dollar for dollar, in terms of what I want to get. And I hate to say it, but Logan Thomas is the other guy. I get it. Now, you guys have been touting him all year at 3,300, right? A safety blanket for Alex Smith, kind of underneath 6 targets back-to-back weeks. He's that guy he's probably going to get you 10. Can get you 16. Hopefully it's 16, but you know what you're getting. Again, I'm paying up at running back heavily, so I'm going to need Logan Thomas. And Logan Thomas is going to be in nearly all of my lineups because I have to save somewhere. So right now it is Hayden Hurst and it is Logan Thomas. I get the logic with Austin Hooper. Burned me last week. Might go back to it. You would think that Dallas Goedert will, get more incorporated back in the offense. The upside was there. He was a top 12 fantasy wide receiver last year, 6 targets last week. I get it. They're getting healthier, so I get that play as well. But really not of conviction with any of these guys. So Logan Thomas and Hayden Hurst for me tonight.
For you season-long players, if you have Taysom Hill, check and see if he has tight end availability. He might help raise the level of the sea of mediocrity above the mediocre. So.
Yeah, what do we have? Yeah. He's a tight end on ESPN. Yahoo, I don't think he's anything. If you play on Flea Flicker, where some of my dynasty leagues are, you can play him at wide receiver. And FanDuel, you can play him at. We don't talk about FanDuel a lot on here because I think more people play on DraftKings. I like the site better. But on FanDuel, he's at tight end as well, and he's not even that expensive. And is he guaranteed to go out and throw even 10 times?
But he might.
He might, exactly. I love him on FanDuel. I think he's a super cool play on FanDuel. What a gimmicky, awesome way to play tight end on FanDuel. Good luck.
If they keep doing the same things, I mean, what we've kind of seen, going on. I mean, even and like we should stipulate they haven't officially named Winston the starter, but they might as well. And when they do, you're going to see what we saw even when Drew Brees was in. You saw Taysom Hill getting some quality snaps, and my guess is that will increase somewhat with Jameis Winston in, especially after Jameis throws 7 interceptions to start his Saints career. So there's that. All right, Kyle, your defenses, sir.
Yeah, I think there's just one game where I think the defenses are very viable. It's Cincinnati versus Washington. It's one of the lower totals on the slate. The Bengals defense gets Alex Smith, who's taking sacks and throwing interceptions at high rates, and he's dropping back a decent amount, which doesn't sound great because passing is efficient, but passing is also a bit higher variance, and it's where you find your touchdowns, your interceptions, your sacks. All of those things are quite good. So I think the Bengals defense, as far as the punt plays go, is one of the better punt plays. But when you look at paying up a little more for defense, and it's not even that much, it's Washington on the other side of the ball. I think this is just an ugly game. I don't like either side. Neither of the quarterbacks playing super well. Joe Burrow has been fine, but I think a lot of the fineness we attribute to him is the fact that he's able to rack up yards on a lot of passes. That's also a thing that's very good for defenses. And it turns out Washington, selecting first round after first round pick on their front seven, has a very good defense. And this Cincinnati Bengals offense, or at least their front five, their Mog Hollies, are probably smaller than most Mog Hollies because they're all backups. It is just a unit that has been destroyed by injuries. It's also, if I said Mog Hollies, it's Hog Mollies.
I was going to fix it, but okay,
those are the two defenses, though. I like the ugly game. I'm just reviewing the things I said the last sentence. I'm like, yeah, good, yeah. Oh no.
The big uglies, bumping uglies up front. Oh wow.
The bum gugglies. Yeah, that is good.
It seems like, is it just me, or is the price never going to catch up with Washington's defense?
I think it's just because they're a bad, maybe it's just because they're a bad team, and you typically see big favorites end up being Pittsburgh this week is the expensive one because they're favored by 10, and Washington's offense doesn't allow that to happen. But it's because they're probably favored by 1 or 2 in a lot of games. When they play the Eagles or when they play the Giants, they're 1 or 2 point favorites. But that's just because their defense is sick and their offense is terrible. And I don't think that's a huge difference between Pittsburgh having both a good offense and a good defense in terms of how it produces fantasy points. Obviously, in the real NFL, it makes a huge difference. But in terms of how it produces fantasy points, it's all the same to me. So I think I keep talking about them every week, too.
Justin, I demand from you a defense not associated with a football team.
Yeah, they have upside, no doubt. It's going to be – I'm going to be paying $3,000 plus, and right now I'm certainly not going to pay for the Steelers at 46. So, gentlemen, I'm going to be going back to the Miami Dolphins. This aggressive, this aggressive Brian Flores defense, best third down defense in the game. They are going to throw the house at the Broncos' new Brock Osweiler. Paxton Lynch, whatever the hell his name is, Ripien. And that's just what they're going to do.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. The list goes on and on. Drew Lock. So yeah, I can't emphasize this any stronger because I do it every week. I'm not one to play games at defense. I want to identify a defense that is safe, and I also want to identify a defense that has some upside as well, that can get a touchdown, that can force a fumble and take it to the house. The Saints were it last week. I can see it. I'll also go back to the Saints at home against the Atlanta Falcons this week. So for me, it's going to be the Saints, aggressive, stout unit. I love the Indianapolis Colts, and I think they're probably a decent play. You do have Aaron Rodgers coming to town, and that concerns me on a fast track. But at every level, the Indianapolis Colts have been one of the best defenses in the game. So I'm going to take a hard look there. So dollar for dollar, the Miami Dolphins on the road at Denver against Paxton Lynch. They're going to create turnovers. They've been doing it all. So not breaking the bank, and there's a level of comfort there. So Saints, Dolphins, and maybe a little bit of the Indianapolis Colts. But I am not going to be mad at you for playing the Minnesota Vikings against. It looked like Dalton's playing, right? Andy Dalton.
He will play. He's cleared.
Is a disaster. So I think you could squeeze 10 points out of this Vikings unit as well.
Very interesting. I guess and I'm glad you're not going to be mad at anybody, Justin, because it really upsets when you're angry with us. I feel like I like that Miami pick, but I do feel like the Washington play has been on point all along. It's just crazy. But anyhow, all right, let's wrap it up. Justin, put a bow on it.
Yeah, guys. Again, week 11. I'm happy to be here with you. We're all healthy, which is the number one thing. Haven't had any real curveballs in the last couple of weeks. I think, like you said, Bob, all along, the NFL has spent a lot of money to protect their product, and by and large, it has worked out. Been an unusual season so far, but we're having a blast, and hopefully we can win some more money this week.
Yeah, that said, watch that Sunday night game. I mean, you got 8 guys not practicing for most of the week, and we'll see how it comes out. But that's definitely
Thursday's the game of the week.
Thursday's the game of the week, but the Sunday night COVID issues are a little worrisome. None of those in the Thursday night game, though. Kyle?
Yeah, I think that'll do it for us, guys. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Of course, check out footballdiehards.com. You can find great stuff from all 3 of us. So if you managed to not get enough of us, which cheers to you. If you managed to not get enough, we have written stuff where you can get our insights without our actual voices at footballdiehards.com. So for myself, at Kyle Tweets here, for Bob at Football Diehard, and Justin at Justin Lonero, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.